and welcome to an evening with Dr. Cornel West, a tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm Nicole Folk, coordinator of Inforum, the Commonwealth Club's Innovation Lab. The video you just saw, it gives you a pretty good idea of what we try to do here at Inforum. Inforum, for me, represents everything that's cultured and vocal about the Bay Area. It's not only the chance to meet and connect with world leaders and foremost thinkers, but also the chance to meet some of the most interesting and strong-willed people in the Bay Area, like you and me. We wouldn't be here tonight with such fantastic speakers like Van Jones and Dr. Cornel West if it weren't for the support of our members and sponsors. It's our members and sponsors that let us bring 1,500 of you to the Castro Theater for a conversation about the civil rights movement then and now. So if you'd like to become a member, become a sponsor, or support us in any way, I really encourage you to talk to our guest services team on your way out. They're awesome. In the last 15 minutes of the program, Dr. West is going to be answering your questions live. So you'll get a cue from our moderator, Van Jones, when it's time to line up on the very far aisle against the wall of the theater to ask your question. A gentle reminder that we'd like for you to ask single, one-part questions that are actually questions. Thank you. A lot of you already have a what's down the pipeline this spring for Inforum. 2 weeks from now, we're hosting the BuzzFeed CEO, LOL, so that's going to be really fun. And then after that, we're talking about sex and dating with nerds the Thursday before Valentine's Day. So if you're a nerd and you like sex and you like dating, come on out. And after that, we've got Tavi Gevinson, Chef Michael Mina. We have the founder of Black Girls Code, Kimberly Bryant, in conversation with Sal Khan. And then we have Judy Bloom and Chuck Palahniuk. So check us out at inforumsf.org. It's going to be a killer year. Okay, enough of me talking. Tonight we have a really special treat for you. We have 2 poetry performers from You Speaks. Woo! We have Sarah O'Neill and Trey Amos. You Speaks is a San Francisco-based organization. They're a leader in the spoken word performance, education, and youth development programs. You're going to be really moved by what you see, and you're going to be left wanting more, but don't worry. Fortunately, you won't have to wait long. This coming Monday, on Martin Luther King Day, they're at the Norse Theater at 7 p.m. for their 18th annual Bringing Out the Noise for Dr. Martin Luther King. It's going to be awesome. Go check it out. But I really don't need to convince you. They will do all the convincing. Let me stop talking. Sarah and Trey, coming up.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Trey Amos. Who am I to think I can be more than my circumstance? To think I can Mayweather my struggles when I've been born into a contract I didn't sign. That none of the roots that raised my fruit John Hancocked either. Southern born and raised, familiar with society's side eye. Who am I? I am a wet dream and a nightmare. My name is Malcolm, Luther, or Lumumba. I am a universal language comfortable on all tongues. I am the good you wish for and the bad you expect. Capacity.
We're all war zones. Every street corner a checkpoint. Violence is not always a dead body. Violence can be a pat down in broad daylight because you share the same hue as suspect. Violence is indicting the man who filmed the killing of Eric Garner, but not the officer that illegally choked the life out of his body. While 5 others assisted in the arrest, violence is convincing a jury that he caused his own death. That had he not been overweight, he would have survived. Violence is needing 6 officers to arrest 1 unarmed, nonviolent man in the first place. How can we accept a government that only applies the law to fill prisons with black bodies? How can we accept a government that permits and perpetuates violence against its own people? The state traded white hoods for police uniforms. The cops kill more black people each year than the KKK lynched. And you want our marches peaceful. You want us calm. You want us quiet. Stop asking us to bite our tongues when we cannot guarantee our siblings safe passage to the corner store. Yet you still want to talk about looting, want to police our protest tactics. You want me to know that you would have cared about the tombstones this nation is hoarding if we hadn't blocked traffic. You think stopping trains is silly. You want us to march peacefully, to replicate your disfigured perception of Martin, but Dr. King said, riots are the voices of the unheard, and you will hear us now. It is not enough for you to hold our dead in your prayers, to wish us love and light. I get the sentiment, but it won't keep my kin from becoming ghosts. I am not interested in resignations or remorse. I don't want apologies. I don't want your guilt. I don't want your tears. I don't want insistence on how not racist you are. I don't want to know how many black friends you have. When you won't even risk the discomfort of calling out your own classmates. You just don't get it, do you? You've never lived out the aftermath, the empty seat at the dinner table, the now widowed mother with 6 mouths to feed. My kin are being sent to heaven well before God has requested their return. And you still want to know why Malcolm called whiteness the devil. You can say all lives matter, but all lives are not killed every 28 hours. How many more bodies will be enough evidence? How many videos of our last words? How many more must there be for you to finally call this a genocide? Thank you all so much for having us and for being here tonight.
We are very honored by this experience and would like to thank Commonwealth for thinking of us and always reaching out to You Speaks. I would invite you to help me welcome Dr. Cornel West with Van Jones to the stage. Give them a round of applause as they make their way.
It's Cornel West, one more time. Well, first of all, I just think we have to give another round of applause to Trey and Sarah. That was
powerful, powerful, powerful.
That was extraordinary.
Oh, Trey Sarah. Wow.
Well, welcome. We're here tonight to celebrate Dr. King's birthday, and I cannot think of a single human being on planet Earth who I would rather hear from and talk with and learn from on his birthday than Dr. Cornel West. I'm not going to waste any time talking about him because I get to talk to him, you see. Y'all can Google him if you want to. Y'all want to know more about the brother. So, skipping the intro.
That's it, brother. That's it.
So first of all, you have a new book out, and I'm just going to get right down to it. Why did you write this book? We finally got a Negro with a holiday and a statue and McDonald's commercials. And here you come with a book saying that he's a radical and a socialist and all these things. And I'm just thinking, are we going to lose the birthday over this book? Why did you? I need a holiday sometime. Why did you write this book?
My brother. I do want to thank Commonwealth and Inform and all of you all coming out tonight. But no, we come here tonight to put a smile on Brother Martin's face from the grave. Martin Luther King Jr., he didn't live and die to have a holiday, especially authorized by the very government that had him under surveillance for 13 years. But it's a good thing that they did. We thank Stevie Wonder and everybody. But the important thing to keep in mind is that, you see, Martin Luther King Jr. is not an isolated icon to be put on a pedestal and registered in some museum for us to view him as spectacle. That he is a part of a tradition. You see, there is no Martin Luther King Jr. without Alberta and Daddy King, without Benjamin Mays and Morehouse, without Ebenezer Baptist Church shaping and molding him. There is no Martin Luther King Jr. without Mahalia Jackson. That Martin King and John Coltrane and Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker and Malcolm X, they all go together. And that's, I think, the way he would want it. He would want to resist the kind of individualizing of him that is so mainstream America. And, of course, we know America almost has to sanitize and sterilize and Santa Clausify him in order to embrace him. And we just want to keep it funky. We don't want no deodorized discourse. No. We're going to keep it funky. We're going to tell the truth about Martin King. That was Sister Coretta Scott King, what a legend she was. What a magnificent sister she was, keeping the legacy alive in the face of so much coming at her. The first time she met me, she said, you know, when Brother Martin Luther King Jr. first took me out on a date, he said to me, I bet you never met a black socialist before. That's 1952. 1952. His hero was Norman Thomas, who was one of the towering democratic socialists of the most barbaric of all centuries of recorded time, the 20th century. So that Martin King comes out of a tradition of a people who've been terrorized, traumatized, and stigmatized for 400 years. And his response is courage, integrity, honesty, decency, dignity, not purity. He wasn't a deity. He was a human being. And like all of us, he had certain contradictions and faults and foibles. But the beautiful thing about him was he would always say, sinner that I am, He's like myself. I was a gangster before I met Jesus, and now I'm a redeemed sinner with gangster proclivities. That's all. That's all. Well, Brother McBride, you understand what I'm talking about. Reverend Michael McBride, he understand what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to mess with you in a minute, but let me...
We got Sister Ashley Yates here, too. Oh, we love you, Ashley. Love you.
Yeah.
Ferguson is real. Ferguson is real.
We do have some of the great leaders and activists who are there on the ground in Ferguson. Give a round of applause, by the way, to the great heroism.
Absolutely.
That
Can't
was
see
shown.
him. His lovely wife, too. Sister McBride in the house, too. Yeah. Lord, yeah.
But let's wrestle with this.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's wrestle with this.
Martin's complicated. He's complicated.
He's complicated. Look, we had the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, after which Time magazine put Dr. King on the cover, founder.
Yes.
Saying essentially that Dr. King is, in fact, the final founder of the Republic, that what Thomas Jefferson was saying, we are all created equal, they weren't able to sort out or work through until finally Dr. King came and completed the founding. But if I take your book seriously, he's not the final founder. He's actually trying to rip the foundation up. Who is Dr. King? Is he the final founder, or is he something very different?
No, it's a wonderful question. No, last thing I want to do is to agree with Time magazine. Anytime you see me in full conformity with Time magazine, say, Negro, get off the crack pipe. I'm not an establishmentarian figure. Time magazine also had a subtitle, you might recall. It said, Martin Luther King Jr., architect of the 21st century. You remember that?
That's true.
That was that second section.
Yes, sir.
Yes. That Martin Luther King Jr., he had a dream, but his dream was not the American dream. He said, my dream is rooted in. His dream was to conceive of a rich democratic experiment in which there was memory of the treatment of our precious indigenous brothers and sisters and the dispossession of their land and the violation of their babies and their men and women. The acknowledgement of the vicious legacy of white supremacy, first in the form of white supremacist slavery, second in the form of American terrorism called Jim Crow Sr., and today, Jim Crow Jr. Keeping track of the patriarchy, keeping track of the homophobia. If we can come to terms with a dream of human beings entering public space without humiliation, engaging in genuine dialogue about public interests with a focus on the least of these, the weak, the vulnerable, the motherless, the fatherless, the poor, working peoples. And all of those were empowered. Martin Luther King's dream would have real substance on the ground. The American dream is qualitatively different. It's individualistic. It's about me, not we. It's competitive rather than cooperative. It tends to put others down in order to go up rather than all of us trying to lift one another together, or at least accentuating the positive, as Harold Arlen would say. Harold Arlen was a near genius, but he's not a Sondheim. Meaning what? Meaning that Martin Luther King Jr. can be an architect of the 20th century, or if the dominant tendencies remain in place, the financializing, the privatizing, the militarizing, America is on the road to a crypto-fascism. Massive surveillance. Poor and working people left out, superfluous throwaways, raw material for the prison-industrial complex, with decrepit school systems generating forms of soul murder every day in the minds and hearts and souls of precious children, with the trade union movement pushed against the wall with no bargaining power vis-a-vis the bosses. That is crypto-fascist. So Martin is saying, and of course, let us never forget the last sermon that Martin that planned to preach, he wrote it on a note in the hotel in Lorraine, hotel in Memphis. It was called "America May Go to Hell." That's not Jeremiah Wright, that was Martin King. That's what he planned to preach on. And they didn't say America should go to hell. It's not a normative claim. He didn't say America ought to go to hell, and then I'm a break dance. No, that's not what he said. He said America may go to hell, because if the dominant tendencies, materialism, militarism, racism, poverty, the four that he talked about, in the neoliberal order in which we find ourselves, big banks and big corporations dictating policy, buying politicians, the school system, more and more rich kids get taught, poor kids get tested. You see, mass media, weapons of mass distraction, afraid of the truth, and then the war against our young people. The thin music produced by the same oligarchs who control radio and recording and video and live performance. So you can get folk King singing tunes, still millionaires. Nat King Cole and Sarah Vaughan turn over in their grave. You come from a people of tremendous levels of excellence. What makes you think that mediocrity and conformity just is required for you just to get over it, just to be successful? Martin Luther King was not obsessed with success. He was concerned with being faithful and using his success for something bigger than him. Like, yes, we code.
Thank you.
Like yes, we code. Let's try to not just diversify, but democratize the new marketplaces like Silicon Valley that looks like the National Hockey League. I ain't got nothing against hockey, but you ain't gonna see me on no ice, god dang it.
Oh, I'm on stage with Cornel West. I'm just...
No, isn't that the truth though, brother?
Hey, I just you know, they warned me this would happen. They said, y'all just break the radio thing for a second. They said nobody can be on stage with Brother West without just getting hypnotized. And whatever you thought you were going to say, and it's happening to me right now. I'm just reporting this brother is bad. So
no, but I know about your work in Silicon Valley, trying to diversify and democratize, and that's very important, though, brother.
Thank you, brother.
That's very important.
Thank you.
To get our young folk fired up
about
the apps and not just the raps. As you put it so well.
Oh my goodness. Well, let me challenge you anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, it is true. We can run the whole. This is San Francisco Bay Area, so we can run the whole rap in terms of neoliberalism and anti-war and anti-poverty and the whole deal. But socialism is many things. It's a moral stand,
absolutely,
against poverty and discrimination and want and war, and certainly in the last century, really without a peer, as a moral stand. But it also claims to be an economic theory, a politics.
That's right.
If you are going to be as critical as you are of capitalism, what do you have to say about not just the failures of socialism, but the crisis of the left in general? I think Dr. King would be heartbroken.
Oh, yes.
To come to, they have these things now called coalitions, which are torture chambers that result in the need for therapy among most people in this room. So why, if the system is so terrible and we're so righteous, why is it that the left is in such disarray? And what do you think a King vision for a renewed left would require, beyond just the critique and the moral righteousness?
That's a tough one. Because, I mean, one is you got just the difficulty of trying to generate leftist activity on the ground that's able to sustain itself. I mean, right now we got the magnificent awakening and even rebellions, arisings, Ferguson, Staten Island, Oakland, and so forth and so on. The question is, how do you sustain it? Because in the face of what is in place, and this is what Martin understood as he moved further and further to the left, and Malcolm X had already understood it many, many years before. And you remember June 27, 1964, Martin Luther King Jr. calls Malcolm X and says, I will join you to go to the United Nations to bring the United States for a trial given the violation of human rights of black people. Attempted to bring them together. They never did come together. And one of the reasons why was that Martin Luther King Jr. viewed as the most dangerous man in America by J. Edgar Hoover. Right? The FBI, COINTELPRO was very real. Bobby Hutton shot right across the street here in Oakland, 17 years old, Black Panther Party. That the level of repression is so intense that it said, if you really concerned about loving black people, loving poor people, loving working people, you better be ready to die. Now, when martyrdom becomes normative for the movement, it's hard for it to be a mass movement. You're going to get some folk ready to throw down. Mumi Abu Jamal, Sundiata, Assata Shakur, they're going to throw down no matter what. But most of their cousins, they're going to kick back. Oh, I need to listen to a little Luther to think this thing over. Boom, 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 boom. You know, and we understand that. We understand that. But on the other hand, you got the other side. You see, you got the warriors on the one hand, but more and more you get the professionals who are willing to be successful, but also be well adjusted to injustice. You see. So what happened with the black folk, we got the kind of reniggerization of the black professional class. Because they got satisfied with money and position and status, but they still scared, they still afraid, they still intimidated when it comes to telling the truth. They don't want to tell the truth. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. Don't mess with my Lexus, don't mess with my position, don't mess with my career. Now, we all appreciate highly successful anybody's.
That's true.
But I come from a tradition that says, I want to know what you're faithful to, not just how you're successful. You see, if you're just faithful to your own self, then you're not being true to what Brother Martin was about. And you have to break the fear, because what the COINTELPRO tried to do, and it did for 30 years, was it put so much fear, especially in black folk and especially in black leaders. You see, they got scared. I don't want to go with Martin. The way of the cross. I don't want to get shot down by gangsters. And Martin said, death, where is thy victory? Grave. Death, where is thy sting? Grave, where is thy victory? Of course we got to die, some of us. Who gives a damn? You're going to die one way or another anyway. Why not just tell the truth? Why not just bear witness? They told Curtis Mayfield, don't go to the rally because your career will go under. He showed up with his guitar anyway. You look at 1966 on the third row, who's sitting there listening to Malcolm X? John Coltrane. When they interview him in Downbeat, what do you think about Malcolm X? He's quite impressive. There goes your career, John. I don't care. I'm John Coltrane. Shit. I got love supreme. I take some giant steps. I got some impressions and expressions. I got some friends like McCoy and them.
But I'm going to keep pushing you, though. I'm going to keep pushing.
I didn't fully answer your question in terms of the... I didn't fully answer your question, though, brother. Because when it comes to socialism, socialism is a logical inference for the Negro national anthem, which is lift every voice. It just says lift every voice in the ballot box. That's fine. We had struggles over that. It took a long time for black people to have the right to vote. People died, and right now they got voter repression. That's a voice in the ballot box. But when you got an electoral system that's more and more characterized by legalized bribery and normalized corruption, then the very politicians you're voting for tend not to be major forces for good, but they tend to be a little bit better than the other party. Republicans mean-spirited, Democrats milquetoast. So you get the dialogue back and forth. But then lift every voice at the workplace. That's where socialism comes in. Oh, let's have working people's voices at the workplace. Let's find out what these elites are doing, what these oligarchs and plutocrats are doing at the highest levels. Let's democratize Wall Street with public accountability. You could begin by sending some of the criminals to jail. You can start with that. All the crimes committed in 2008, not one Wall Street executive goes to jail. And Jamal get caught with a crack bag, goes straight to jail. You can start with that, just public accountability. Public accountability of all of us, including the police, of course. Including the police. You got to send police to jail when they violate the law and violate the dignity of people. That's all.
Well, now you...
That's all.
Now you've gone too far, sir. You know, I think the most dangerous kind of radical, those radicals that say the police should obey the law.
Isn't that the truth?
That's what I believe the young people were talking about in Ferguson. But I'm gonna keep pushing you, sir, because
absolutely.
When we think about this moral witness that you're doing, powerful. You're certainly at this point in your life, as strange as it must feel to you, the most powerful, prophetic, and beloved figure that we have in the country right now.
Well, you got a lot of them. You got a lot of them.
With some young ones nipping at your heels.
We got some good ones, though.
But I'm beginning to worry and wonder about the model.
Yes.
Let me take on Dr. King for a second. From 1963, March on Washington, 34-year-old young brother freestyling, to 2008, we go from Washington, D.C. protesting a president, 2008, black folk having the presidency, 45 years plus struggle. And yet, that entire process of lawsuits in the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., marches on Washington, D.C., electing Negro mayors and the whole political process, that whole over-focus now seems somewhat suspect. Why is Dr. King the right model for now? Why not Marcus Garvey? Why not an economic hero? Help is not on the way from Washington, D.C. Folks can't eat protest signs or sound bites. And we need jobs, enterprise, industry. I wonder if we don't do ourselves some disservice by convincing every young African-American child that their greatest hero is a man who made a speech but never made a business work when they need a job. How do you respond to that critique?
No, I appreciate that. I have a deep love for Marcus Garvey because he got up every morning at 6 o'clock a.m. with black people on his mind in terms of how he can empower them. Most black folk wait until about 10 a.m. Because you can go crazy, you know. You can go crazy. You need a little soft jazz before you get into what Marcus Garvey was dealing with. Marcus Garvey had a profound love for black people.
Yes.
And I love him for it. And he was thinking constructively. He's come out of the Booker T. Washington tradition, building institutions. And it's true that Martin King never built institutions in the economic and civic spheres. And so right now, with big business, big money, big corporations, big banks in the driver's seat, we do have to think economically. We have to think about capital and credit and finances. This is very, very important indeed. But given the situation of poor and working people who have very limited access to credit or capital, oftentimes find themselves locked into underemployment or unemployment, undereducation, or sometimes even hardly any formal education at all, even though they find very informal ways of being highly educated, but it can present a challenge. that the issue of Garvey's legacy, as you put it, the kind of thing that you've been working with in terms of Silicon Valley and the financial sector, and I think that's very important, and nobody can read Martin's mind, or heart and soul, but I think he would view that as very important as well. But he also knew that in the end, given the powers that be and the forms of weaponry that people have access to, you're going to have social motion, momentum, and social movements to bring pressure to bear. You know, Emma Goldman used to say that if voting would create fundamental transformation, the ruling class would make it illegal. Well, there's something to that. There's something to that. Now, Emma Goldman was an anarchist, and I love my anarchist brothers and sisters. But she had a deep insight. That is to say, necessary, not sufficient conditions. But let's look at the march, though. Martin marches 64, 65. I hope y'all did get a chance to see the film Selma now.
You like to see it?
Oh, yes, I heard you. Hope you got a chance to see it. We were talking before. It looked like you got blacked out, right?
Yeah.
The Oscars, but you don't expect too much from the Oscars, you know.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what. It was truly Oscar the Grouch in that. If you haven't checked your Twitter feed, Selma got nominated for Best Picture, which is good, and nothing else. Not Best Director, not even nominated.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Not Best Actor, not even nominated.
Ridiculous.
All the way down the line, which is a slap in the face to an African-American female director who should have won, certainly been nominated, but should have won for Best Picture this year.
That's true. That's exactly right. Exactly. But when you look, for example, at the marches, though, even like the marches that my dear brother Al Sharpton led, that march did not present any critique or opposition to the U.S. government. You see, Martin's critique was of the U.S. government. You got black Secretary of Homeland Security, whose job is to make sure the homeland is safe. You got black Attorney General to make sure the law is enforced fairly. You got a black President, Commander-in-Chief, all three of them. Yet young black brothers get shot 28 hours every day during their 6 years in office in not one federal prosecution. Not one federal prosecution. You don't bring any pressure to bear, no critique to bear. We understand why Al Sharpton doesn't bring critique to bear, because he's an ambassador of the White House. So he's not going to bring critique to bear. We understand that. He's staying in that lane. It's a little narrow lane and not going to last too long. We praying for the brother. But we talking about the truth. The condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. I don't care what color the politicians are, the elites are, the gangsters are, the ministers are, the whatever. Malcolm X used to say what? I'm for the truth, no matter who's for or against it. I'm for justice, no matter who's for or against it. That's Malcolm X. That's Malcolm X, you see. So you can end up with all of this energy, but it gets channeled when you have folk coming in from White House and other places, so that there's no accountability. You see, that's why there hasn't been a follow-through on Trayvon Martin. We go on and on and on and all the talk. No. When the local and the state authorities fail, you go to the federal authorities. Now, it just happens to be chocolate now. But the chocolate brothers and sisters, black and brown poor, still getting shot down like dogs. Where's the voices? That's the question, you see. And that's a serious question, because hypocrisy is just, Martin used to say this, and he echoes Mahatma Gandhi. You know, Gandhi said if he had to choose between cowardice and vision and violence, he would choose violence. That's what Gandhi said. King said over and over again, one evil worse than violence is cowardice. That's Martin. I'd rather be dead than afraid. That's what he used to say over and over again. What did he say to the face of Whitney Young when Whitney Young told him, you shouldn't come out against the war because that's going to hurt our movement. We're only concerned about Negroes. I don't know why you're concerned about the Vietnamese. He said, Whitney, that might get you a corporation grant, but it won't get you a foothold in the kingdom of truth. That's the kind of Martin we love. The babies in Vietnam, just like the babies in Yemen and Pakistan and Somalia, have the same value as the babies in Newtown, Connecticut, who are vanilla or red or yellow or white or any other color. You got to be morally consistent. You got to try to have what Jane Austen called constancy. Which means what? Which means that your popularity might have to go. Give up your popularity in the name of integrity. Who cares anyway about what's popular if it's not generating any forces for good on the ground? That's Martin King. Oh, that's Brother Martin. That's Brother Martin. You remember Andy Young? I was talking to Brother Andy, and he was telling me, he said, I'll never forget all my life. He said, they put Martin in a paddy wagon for 4.5 hours in the dark with a German shepherd. And that German shepherd was coming at him, barking, trying to bite him for 4.5 hours all by himself. When he got out in Reedsville prison in Atlanta, the only person there was Daddy King and Andrew Young. They were sure Martin had a nervous breakdown because he couldn't walk straight. And all that Martin said was, this is the cost we must bear for the freedom of our people. That's what love is. That's the radical love in Martin's core that relates to Coltrane's Love Supreme, the Caravan of Love of the Isley Brothers, the love train of the OJs, the love train that Curtis Mayfield sings about and People Get Ready. Black people have been the most hated and despised people, at least one of the most hated and despised, but our contribution to the world is not just a reconstruction of freedom and democracy, but we've taught the world much about how to love in the face of tear and trauma and stigma. That's what soul music is. That's why we like Sly Stone. That's why we like Stevie Wonder. That's why we like Ray Charles, not because they just entertain us. They're love warriors. How these Negroes keep loving folk, giving all this hatred coming their way? What goes into them? Something deep is happening. And the sad thing is among the younger generation, they're losing access to that. That's why the younger generation don't have groups that are tender and sweet and gentle like the Delphonics and the Whispers and Enchantments and the Dales and the Marvelettes and the Jones girls and Sheila and Sheila of the emotions. I mean, that's tender. That's part of the love train and the struggle for freedom. It's not say my name, it's try a little tenderness. That's part of the love train. That's Martin too. That's black folk at our best. That's humanity at its best, actually. Oh, Martin, we love you. Oh, we love you. We need you too. We need you.
Now look, I got reporter friends looking at me just shaking their head. I defy anybody from NPR or any place else up here to interview this man any better than I'm doing. This is as good as it's gonna get. So
No, I'm gonna stop and listen to your questions now. No, but Martin put you on fire, though, you know.
But let me challenge you again.
Absolutely.
And it goes to this question of love and this question of nonviolence and and it's not just Dr. King and you reflecting on Dr. King. In your work and in your stand as a Christian, you have been a big proponent of nonviolence.
But I'm not a pacifist.
Not a pacifist, and Dr. King was but a big.
Don't show up my house messing with my mama. No. In the name of Jesus. But no, go right ahead. Now, Martin was a pacifist.
Yes.
He's a different kind of Negro than I am. Go right ahead.
That's right. But let's, we mentioned a lot of names up here tonight. Haven't mentioned yet Mandela.
Yeah, that's right.
And the reason I want to mention it is because something really terrible happened, in my view, when he died. And that was, he was celebrated and mourned all around the world as a nonviolent leader. And he was put in the same breath as a Gandhi, put in the same breath as a Dr. King. And so the whole world felt, well, we lost another Gandhi, another Dr. King. Mandela was a leader of an armed struggle.
Yes, he was.
Mandela was the founder of Umkhonto Sizwe, the Spear of the Nation, the armed wing of the ANC. When he came out of prison, the first thing he said is, "My name is Nelson Mandela. I am a disciplined member of the African National Congress."
That's right. That's right.
He never, despite all the pressure, he could have been out of prison 10 years earlier, never denounced the armed struggle, refused to end the armed struggle until the day of the election. And yet, he has to be called a nonviolent leader to be accepted and to be celebrated. Now, I've never heard of a single white man called a nonviolent leader. I just haven't heard it.
That's exactly right.
We don't celebrate Winston Churchill because he was a nonviolent leader. We don't celebrate George Washington because he was a nonviolent leader. We celebrate them because they took up arms against their oppressors. They took up arms against people who were violent and vicious and evil. And yet somehow the world is unable to celebrate a black man. If there was ever a regime that should justifiably be resisted by force of arms, it would have been the apartheid regime. And yet we cannot celebrate a black man who takes up arms in defense of his people. Now, to me, that's a long way from any sort of racial sanity. I'm not asking you to abandon your nonviolent position, but I'm trying to help me understand why it is that even a Nelson Mandela cannot be seen as 100% of a human being and respected for being willing to do what George Washington did on these shores for his own people.
No, brother, I think you laid it out. You laid it out, though, brother. I think you laid it out. Let's look at, on the other hand, let's look at the rich Puerto Rican tradition. Albizu Campos, Oscar Lopez Rivera, Lolita Lebron. These are folk who became revolutionaries who were willing to engage in violence against the U.S. government because they had been colonized, dominated, spit on, violated for so long. Now, they are viewed as terrorists, right? Now, Nelson Mandela was on the U.S. terrorist list until when? 2006. You see? So that under the present law, for example, of the National Security Agency, Martin Luther King Jr. being in association with Nelson Mandela would be in association with a terrorist, which means that he actually could be arrested or assassinated without due process. We already had 4 Americans assassinated in the last 6 years with no due process at all. At all, because of their association or connection with terrorist groups. Now, there are gangsters out there. I mean, you know, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, these are some gangster folk. Ain't no doubt about that. You know what I mean? That is the barbaric wing of a particular peoples who themselves have been mistreated but respond in a barbaric way. Then you got barbarism as part of the West. And the barbaric face of the West responding, suppressing them, and you get the clash of barbarisms. You know, Samuel Huntington called it the clash of civilization. No. It's the clash of barbarisms. Because every community got gangsters. I grew up with gangsters on the chocolate side of Sacramento. I still love them. I'm a Christian. I love everybody. But I watch those Negroes because they're gangsters. And they're doing things they ought not do. You see what I mean? But the difference here is that in America, mainstream media, or in Western media, anytime a black or brown person or leader emerges, they are always measured by the criteria of how does it relate to white fears, white insecurities, white anxieties, and white interests. So the people say, we love Mandela. What you love about Mandela? We love the fact that Mandela came out of jail and didn't do to us what we had done to him. That's why you love Mandela. But Mandela didn't go to jail because he loved white brothers and sisters. White brothers and sisters precious like everybody else, but you don't have to be center stage all the time. He went to jail because he loved black people for 27 and a half years. And he emerged with integrity, honesty, decency, and the spiritual depth that said, I'm not going to do to you what you did to me. Martin is viewed in the same way. One of the reasons why Martin ended up with all of these holidays and every street got a boulevard, usually on the chocolate side of town and so forth, is because Martin is viewed first and foremost as what? He loved white folk, which he did. But he started on the chocolate side of town. He was willing to live and die because he loved black people. And he had a spiritual depth that allowed him to love brown and yellow and white and others. But in America, and this is part of the problem of black politicians, it's part of the problem of the Obama administration. You can almost measure what they do or going to do by their analysis of white fears, white insecurities, white anxieties, and white interests. You can just almost view every move. Well, we don't want to do this because Fox News, they're going to hate you anyway. Well, we're going to keep Richard.
All right.
Oh, we don't.
Right.
We want to do this. CNN going to say this. So-and-so going to say. No. What do you think is right? What do you think is just? What do you think is moral?
We're going to, well, look, first of all, give Dr. Cornel West a hand for his courage and candor.
God bless you.
And we have a rare treat and opportunity in that he's actually agreed to take a few questions. And so I want to ask people to begin to move to the microphones. I believe the microphones will be lit so you can see them and find them. And we'll probably do about 10 minutes of Q&A. We're a little bit over, but I don't think anybody here is mad. Anybody here mad that we're a little bit over?
That's nice.
As we, I can't see that clearly. Okay, one more for me. Okay, so as you get set up there, let me. So I'm going to try to ask one that may get a short answer. I don't know.
No, I'm gonna cut back.
And I ask you this, and by the way, let me just take a moment to say how much I appreciated you when I was going through my challenges and difficulties, having left the Obama administration, and I went to Princeton to teach, and my office was literally from here to there, from Cornell West for 1 year. And I have to tell you, 6 months in the White House was an extraordinary experience. 1 year with Cornel West is exponentially.
We had a good time, brother. We had a good time. It was a blessing having you there too, though, brother. I tell you.
Yeah, but and then he was also kind enough when the first week of I had a show with Newt Gingrich and other folks on CNN, and he came the first week to get our ratings up, which we greatly appreciated. We should have kept you, but anyway. But I ask you then, I'll just ask you now. Clear concern with the shortcomings of the Obama administration. If you had to say one thing that you thought that Obama, either as a human being or as a leader, has gotten right over the past 6-7 years, if you had to, what do you think that Obama has gotten right, either as a human being or as a leader in the past 6-7 years?
You mean not just giving good speeches? He gives some good speeches sometimes.
Yes.
But you mean to policy?
In any way.
Any way?
Anything.
Oh, no, I think he's given some good speeches. He actually has. I like his focus on pre-K, our precious children. I think that's very important. Definitely. I think there's elements of the health care that's wonderful in terms of making it accessible. I just hate that big pharmaceutical companies and big insurance companies still in the driver's seat. I don't like that. You give me some time, I can generate a list for the brother. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I said it would probably be a short answer, and I was right. So, but
I'm glad that he hasn't been hurt, because I pray for him every day in terms of the hatred generating ugly attack and being harmed, he and his precious family.
Yes.
And I think that is a beautiful thing, and we ought to, those of us who are religious ought to continue to pray, because we've got some real gangster-like right-wing fellow citizens out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Hi. As the poets who started tonight's event outlined today, I think extremely well, there's something really exciting and passionate and interesting happening about race relations in America today. So I'm curious about, as far as the Black Lives Matter movement goes, what do you see as the major opportunities and challenges, both sort of thinking about today, but also thinking about what history can teach us about what really works for advancing this important issue?
Wonderful question. Wonderful question. I mean, as I said before, the most important thing is that significant numbers of young people, disproportionately chocolate, but not exclusively black or brown. You got a lot of white brothers and sisters out there, and that's a beautiful thing to see. It's multiracial, multicultural. But when you break the back of fear and you recognize you're really willing to pay some major cost, then the powers that be have to take notice. So then the question becomes, what is short term and what is long term? Long term, I hope we're talking about coalescing with ecological movement, workers' movement, anti-homophobic movement, anti-racist movement, to be able to come together, lifting voices that bring pressures to bear on a plutocratic capitalist. And we said very little about its imperialism in the Middle East and other places, but we have to bring that to bear as well, because there are direct connections between what's going on in the Middle East and West Bank and Palestine, the young people trying to sustain some kind of resistance, connecting with young folk there. And of course, the challenge is always ensuring that even as you stay in contact with humanity, Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims who are very, very, very precious, that you don't succumb to any anti-Jewish hatred. You can hate Israeli occupation and love Jewish brothers and sisters.
Yes.
That's very important. That's very important.
Very good.
Occupation of anybody is wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong.
Very, very good. Yes.
Okay, hello.
How you doing there? Good to
I'm
see you.
doing good. It's really good to see you again. You're one of my heroes, so thank you so much for this opportunity. I also want to talk a little bit about what's been going on with some of the stuff in Ferguson and all the protests, and particularly looking at the way that we can hold these police accountable.
Yes, yes.
Because I'm applying to law school right now, and so and to study civil rights and whatnot. And so one of the things that I've thought a lot about is that police are allowed to shoot when they fear for their lives, yet they fear for their lives a lot more quickly with black men. And so we see this every 28 hours happening. And so my question really is how do you think we can work to hold police accountable for that quicker visceral reaction that happens when they confront a black man that they see threatening, as being more threatening more quickly than they would a white man?
Yes. Well, one is, I mentioned before, just the legal response, which is just accountability, send them to jail if they violate the law, or at least get a police fair trial.
Yeah.
Look at the evidence, let's see what the argument is, then they go to jail. It begins to break, I mean, if they're innocent, if they're guilty, it begins to break the culture, because what has happened for so long, the culture of police departments in the country is that it's normal to treat young black and brown brothers and sisters disrespectful. To me, that's morally pathological. It might be normal for some, but no, that's not normal for me. And I would say the same thing if they treated white youth that way. If the black police treated white youth that way, I say exactly the same thing, based on moral and spiritual grounds. You see. But it's so normalized, it's routinized. So first, legally, you got to send them to jail, but then you have to break the culture, which means you got to get the police on the inside who have integrity to raise their voices and say, you all ought not to be doing this. We got to change our culture. We got to engage in fair policing, not arbitrary policing. And I think the Ferguson leadership, just asking Notori and the others, are actually having impact in terms of shaping that dialogue. Now, it's connected to the larger issue of the prison-industrial complex, the new Jim Crow, the ways in which black people are criminalized as a people, young people criminalized, young black and brown criminalized, even before the police engage in any kind of activity. And a lot of that's mass culture. A lot of that's mass culture. That's just the beginning of an answer to that. Yeah.
Wonderful. In the interest of time, just questions only.
Yes.
Questions
I'm
only.
told question only. I'm East Bay born and raised. That's part of who I am. So And when you mentioned Bobby Hutton, he was a personal friend of mine.
You knew Bobby Hutton. God bless you. God bless you, brother.
My issue for today is that as an individual who is who you are, and you speak how you speak, how can we, within our own culture and kind, participate in a system that for my 64 years has literally rejected us? How do you co-participate?
Thank you.
Did you want to answer that one, though, brother?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a tough one. Because rejection has different degrees and gradations, right? For 244 years, it was rejected. For 89 years under the U.S. Constitution, which is a pro-slavery document in practice, no matter what the words say. On the ground, it was a pro-slavery document, right? That we were rejected, but we were still integral to the system because it was our labor that generated the wealth. That was the precondition for American government itself. So we both integral and rejected. Jim Crow. So rejection has variations in that sense, right? Back to Garvey. Garvey said the world is made being black a crime. I intend to make it a virtue. What you gonna do, Brother Marcus? We going to Africa. What land you got in mind? Don't make it Liberia and Israel like that, where you jump out of one place and you land on somebody else's back and say it's your land. They did that in Liberia. They did that to Palestinians in the Middle East. The Jewish brothers and sisters jumped out of Hitler's vicious, ugly, Jew-hating Nazi regime. They had nowhere else to go. They land, boom, you got people there. Well, we don't see them. Look. They're there, you know. And you got to choose. Either coexist or you dominate. Albert Einstein said coexist. Jabotinsky said dominate. Netanyahu come right out of Jabotinsky. Dominate. So that in that sense, when you say, well, are we rejected enough to leave? No, not really. Most of us not leaving.
Yeah. Let me just say a few things. I think our story has to be retold. There's a reason, maybe. If you had a black child, as I do, 2 little black boys, it's hard to tell the story of our enslavement. It's hard to tell the story of Jim Crow terror. It's hard to explain why Daddy's going on an airplane to Ferguson, if that's the actual first, second, and third act. But what if it's prologue? What if it's prologue? What if there's a country that has every kind of human being in it, every color, every faith, every sexuality, every gender expression, every kind of human living inside of it, and in that country, they are developing drones, they're developing biotechnology, they're developing nanotechnology, high technology with low morals and low values. High technology with low morals and low values. And what if in that country there were some people rejected and despised who, because of their long journey in the country, knew the country well, but also know what it means when the country acts its worst, and therefore insist on acting its best at a moment in history where humanity needs moral leadership? What if this long trail of abuses is preparing a people and our allies to really love folk? If that's true, then this crucible that we've been through isn't about rejection, it's about preparation, you see. Now, if we've been prepared through our struggle and through heroic and sheroic leadership like Ella Jo Baker, like Fannie Lou Hamer, like Dr. King, like Barbara Jordan, if we've been prepared through their example to speak truth to power, to be incredibly creative. Our hearts have been broken and stretched so many times we can hold a lot. If that's who we choose to become, and every generation of black folk have to choose who you want to become, but if that's who you choose to become, there's no more important community on the face of the earth than these young folk they're trying to put in prison and shoot down. And if that's true, then the world needs to come to your rescue and your aid, but you also need to stand and walk in a certain dignity.
Yeah.
I've got to talk to my children, and that's what I tell them. Next question.
Question for both of you, but thank you so much for being here tonight.
And this will probably be the last question, unfortunately. The second to the last question. So go ahead, sir.
So what hope is there for a country when we elect a man who we hope is going to defend us against financial predators and who elevates the financial predatory class, who's supposed to protect us from the whistleblowers and promises to do that, and then viciously attacks them, and then expands all the surveillance against us and continues pushing us down? If a black man as a president, who we all were happy to see elected, can't do that, what hope is there for America?
That's a deep question. Now, I've got a friendly correction to the latter part of your wonderful question. Because I heard you said, we all. That's not everybody, brother. Everybody didn't agree with what you just said. In the country, in this room maybe, but not in this room, but not in the country. Not in the country. A lot of folk hate him. Now, the thing about it is that Martin's fundamental question, he's sitting there at Harry Belafonte, and I break bread with Brother Harry every month just to keep my sanity. And when Martin, 3 days before he died, turned to Harry and said, "Are we integrating into a burning house?" And Harry said, "Well, what did you do, Brother Martin?" He said, "Well, we become firemen and women." And what does he mean by that? He means that it could be the case that the materialism, the racism, the poverty, and the racism cut so deep in America that America may not have the capacity to engage in the kind of fundamental transformation. It may not even have the capacity to fundamentally hear and heed Martin's words and therefore have to sanitize him in order to keep moving forward. Now, if that's the case, and we're back to Malcolm X and in some ways Marcus Garvey, right? Because Garvey used to say, as long as black people in America, the masses of black people will always live lives of ruin and disaster, because he does not see the vast majority of white brothers and sisters having the capacity to treat the black poor with decency and dignity. He said they will accept the exceptional ones of the middle class, but not the black poor and the black working class. Now, that's a fundamental question. That's the question of the black nationalist tradition. It goes back to Elijah Muhammad and Minister Louis Farrakhan and others. And I'm not a black nationalist, but I take that question very seriously because I love black people. And if that's the case, then, and here this is what Martin says, we must live lives of love, justice, integrity, do all we can to embrace as many as we can, even if America does not have the capacity to do it, because we not only look domestically, but you look internationally. You connect with Brazil, you connect with other countries around the world that are trying to create a larger global world in which their forces are good, because America might just be too Peter Pan-like. Grow rich, grow powerful, but never grow up. There's that possibility. There is that possibility. And that's the issue of hope. I'm sorry to go on to
last very, very short question, sir, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Van, and thank you, Dr. West. My name is Norman Huntsman. And I don't believe there's a soul in here that wants something other than what I want for my children, what I want for myself. There is an I, but truly, as long as there's an us in them, there will be no fucking we. And Ben, you said earlier, he didn't have Dr. King didn't have a business. His business was love, and it paid dividends. How do you sell this generation that has through the way they begin to receive information, just really short attention spans. How do you sell them the concepts of justice and love over the arc of time?
Okay.
And I heard Brother Keith Muhammad one time, he said they don't care about taking your future because they don't see one for themselves. How do you sell them on a future and on the concept that nothing outside of themselves will make them essentially better human beings? How do you sell that in this information age in 5-minute seconds, 5-minute blocks, 24-hour news cycle? How do you do that?
Thank you.
Profound question, brother. Profound question. Well, one is, I'm not sure I would use the language of sale at all. You see what I mean? Because as a Christian, for me, the beloved community, the kingdom of God is not a brand. The black freedom struggle is not a commercial. And to treat people tenderly and lovingly is not an advertisement. See what I mean? It's a way of being in the world. Now, as a Christian, it's a way of the cross, right? And the cross is unarmed truth and unconditional love, and it's always relatively impotent. It always looks as if it has no power, absolutely, and yet we discover as you get closer to the grave that love and the fundamental things that matter in your life have much to do with the depths of your love and the quality of your compassion to others, you see. That's that dividend that you were talking about in relation, and I'm with you on that. So the market metaphors have become so ubiquitous that it's hard to tease out the non-market dimensions of human life. You see? And yet, in the end, what is worth living? What do you want folk to say about you when you in that coffin and they trying to say something about who you were? They don't care about your market activity and your mansion and your trophy wives and husbands and so forth and so on. They're going to say something about your character, your virtue, your integrity, your decency, your honesty. And it depends on how long that eulogy gonna be. Maybe it's pretty short.
Could be short.
But Martin had a long one because, that brother, he wasn't perfect, but oh my God, what a love supreme he was. Let us never forget him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now listen. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna say a few things just to give my own response to abuse my privilege as the moderator, and then I'm going to ask you for a 60-second idea that you think would make a difference in all the stuff we've been talking about. So we're putting you on warning. That'll be our last little bit. But one brother asked, "What hope is there?" Another brother asked, "How can we encourage our young people?" Well, first of all, I just want to be very, very clear. The young people have been the ones encouraging us this past 6 months, past 7 months. They've been the ones.
That's right.
Using the very technology that everybody said was going to turn them into ADD idiots. And they've instead been using that technology to move a nation that hadn't been moved this way for almost 50 years. So I don't think the young people are the problem. I just want to be very clear about that. Then the brother said, if the president lets you down, what hope is there? The president lets you down, what hope is there? I don't remember that many presidents that didn't let me down. I don't remember that. Remember that.
That's true.
I don't remember that being our theory of change. Was that we were supposed to put on really cool buttons and really cool bumper stickers and watch a Will.I.Am video and vote once.
That's right.
And then the country was going to be perfect. That wasn't even the slogan. It wasn't yes, he can. It was yes, we can. Now,
that's right.
I don't care. And look, I worked in the White House, and I worked for this president. I'm proud of it. No matter what I do in the rest of my life, the first line of my obit, if I'm blessed to have one, will be that I worked for President Obama. And I'm proud of it. That said, Obama didn't run for the office of Dr. King.
That's right.
Obama ran for the office of LBJ, of Bill Clinton, of George W., of Reagan, he ran in that lane.
That's right, that's right.
And we can judge whether he met that LBJ standard, which I don't think anybody would say he did. We can judge whether he exceeded the George W. Bush standard, which I think he did just when he woke up in the morning. So we can try to put him, But my view is that the kind of leadership that's required is twofold. You have to have a leader in the White House willing to be moved. A George W. Bush or a Mitt Romney, I don't believe would have been moved no matter what we did, but you also have to have a movement willing to do the moving. And that's where I fault more of us, that we weren't willing to put in the streets a movement willing to do the moving, so that even if there wasn't LBJ capacity, you still needed a Selma to unleash it. And we didn't have our Selma moment until these young people, and nobody in my age group stood up. So we're really just now seeing, I think, what yes we can do. And I'm proud to be a part of, you mentioned prison industrial complex, new Jim Crow. I'm proud to be a part of the Cut 50 movement. We're working to cut the prison population in half in 10 years, in half. Send 1 million people home. I'm also proud to be a part of the Yes We Code. We did Yes We Can twice, but now we're doing Yes We Code to teach 100,000 African American, Latino, Native American young men and young women, girls and boys to be the best computer coders in the world and take over Silicon Valley in a good way. So I'm proud to be a part of those movements. And all the movements to come. The hope is in the hands of the people and the hearts of the people. And the country's not going to be any better than these young people who are out here and who deserve our great support. I want to give a big round of applause to you at the end, but before we do, you've been all around the country, Dr. West. You've got a chance to sit with some of the greatest musicians, some of the greatest artists, some of the greatest leaders, some of the... Let me just say one thing, and I know I'm over it, I just need a second to say this.
No, that's all right.
This brother would have office hours at Princeton. Students paying $50,000 a year. And his office hours were open to everybody, meaning you go up to your office and there would be students, janitors, community leaders, young mothers, all the way out the door and down the steps. He refused to turn any, he said, I have office hours for whoever wants to come to my office. This is the kind of person that we have here. And it was a thrill to watch you treat everybody with dignity, treat everybody with respect. Just because you can't pay the tuition doesn't mean you can't talk to Cornel West. And so, give us your 60-second, any idea that's inspired you, and then we're going to bring this to an end. Anything that inspires you. 60-second idea.
It's the precious memories of those who came before, who faced conditions of catastrophe we know not of. And if they can muster hope and love and courage and vision, then even though we live in an empire that's in relative decline owing to plutocratic domination, the culture is in deep decay. It's hard to gain access to trust. It's hard to gain access to compassion. The political system's dysfunctional. The mass media is just obsessed with these distractions that have little to do with things that really, really matter. That we have been in catastrophic conditions before. And I come from a blues people. And the blues is fundamentally about catastrophe. If B.B. King says nobody loves my mama, she might be driving too. That's catastrophic. We live in catastrophic conditions right now. But the blues people says, I keep struggling anyhow against the grain in spite of, because there's wind at my back. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel says, indifference to evil's more evil than evil itself. How do we shatter indifference, shatter callousness, shatter not caring, and in the end, not acting? And I think now we're at a turning point. We're at a fork in the road.
Absolutely.
We're at a fork in the road.
Well, listen, thank you. Let's give a big round of applause to Dr. Cornel West for sharing his thoughts with us tonight. And yeah, you can do that.
Indeed.
You can do that.
God bless you.
Yeah.
God bless you. God bless you.
Very, very good. Very, very good.
Bless you.
Good.
Oh man, that was fun. Oh, that was wonderful, brother. Lord, yeah. God bless y'all.
Hey. Now,